Hey there, I'm Dave, the host of Beer in Front. Sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. I'll talk about some old school beers that maybe you've forgotten about, some new beers that have the potential to be a classic. I'll also talk to various people around the beer world and get their stories all about beer. That's Beer in Front, and it's available on all of your favorite podcast apps.
Hey friends, welcome to the most special of episodes of the Beard Owl podcast. I know, it's late. Weird Al's birthday has passed. I'm sorry, but I'm also a firm believer in celebrations lasting longer than they probably should. So this is a slightly belated birthday gift for our hero, Weird Al Yankovic. And I did this before, doing it again, and it never ceases to delight me. I reached out to, folks in the podcasting community and just the Weird Al fan community at large, and I was overwhelmed by the delightful responses from folks talking about how Weird Al has affected their lives. And I'll tell you what, Weird Al, if you are listening to this, you're probably not. But you might be. Who knows? If you are. I know you get this all the time, but I'm profoundly affected by how you have profoundly affected people's lives. And it's been amazing for me to hear the stories from people that it's just like, you know what? He touched my life in this amazing way for the better. And it's something that I aspire to, truly inspirational. And it's why I do this freaking show. So, without further ado, here are our friends. And I would like to give a special shout out at the beginning to friend of the show and delightful human being and extraordinarily talented musician, Summer Woods, for once again providing some delightful piano covers of Weird Al's music to use in between some of our delightful submissions. So please enjoy.
Hi, my name is Claire. This is my submission for the What Weird Al Means to Me for the Beard Owl podcast for his birthday. Excuse any background noises. I am out for a smoke walk, so I'm just going to ramble for a bit and hopefully you'll find something usable. Okay. Weird Al was introduced to me when I was 6 years old, and YouTube had literally just been created, 2006. The very first thing my parents opened up the computer, got on YouTube, and they showed me Eat It, and they showed me Fat. And I remember watching those for the first time, and remembering is very funny, but I had no idea what was going on, because I don't even think they had showed me Beat It, or Bad. I think I probably heard those first. And Weird Al's humor is something I share very much with my parents. I see a lot of his humor in them in many different ways, and it is still a way we connect to this day. It's very, very important to me. Specifically this year, I've, rediscovered the works Weird Al and have been wildly enjoying myself because so much of it has also inspired me to start writing and learning how to write music and learning how to do music. I'm trying to learn a couple different instruments right now. I'm having a kick-ass time doing it. I've never really written music before. And a lot of what Weird Al means to me as well is the freedom to be myself. I think I've always been a little bit of a, oddball, I guess. It's probably not too uncommon for anyone in the Weird Al fandom or broader world. But I've found a lot of joy in it this year. A lot of real expressive joy. And pretty much a lot of that is thanks to Weird Al. And the warmth and confidence and exuberance of that kind of performance is something I aspire to be. It's inspirational to me. And also something I've been able to share with my friends, and nothing feels better than just popping on an old Weird Al concert, cracking open a bottle of rosé and chatting. And that's what I've been doing a lot of this year. And it has felt uplifting and healing and wonderful all at once. And I'm very happy to be in this world, and what Weird Al means to me is a wonderfully happy year, and good things ahead. It always feels like good things ahead. I'm sorry if that was a little stoned of me. I probably could come up with something more eloquent, but I think you probably get the picture. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Augie Doggy 08 from the podcast BFYTW, and what Weird Al means to me is a very complicated question. I didn't grow up with Weird Al like many of my friends were, but they were the ones that introduced me to it, and I always saw it as like, okay, yeah, this is something fun that every friend does with each other. They pick apart a song and they come up with their own lyrics and they change the whole thing, and it's just something that you do, like, right? It's like playing games. It's something you do with friends. But I always felt that his work, his art, was an expression of humility. And what I mean by that is that he oftentimes parodies songs that either have a deep or darker context, or something along those lines, or some sort of vanity to it. And he makes parody songs that are completely mundane or opposite of what the song is, or makes fun of the song in some way, you know. So I feel like his art is humility. Through his music, he teaches humility. And that's what Weird Al means to me.
It's an honor to be invited to this wonderful podcast. I would like to say that I just love Weird Al. He's a great parody artist, as well as many other talents. I wanted to say congratulations, Al, on your Walk of Fame star and the completion of your albums. Thank you for being such a humble, awesome artist. I just love you and your band, and emo too. I got to see you for the very first time last year, August 2022, at Chesterfield Amphitheater in St. Louis. It was my first concert of yours, and it was a non-parody show. I was the girl in the bubble dress. I just wanted to say, I meant to bring you a birthday card. And a year later, I found this podcast where they're putting together something for your birthday. I'm so happy to be a part of this. Since last year, the bubble dress won at a Halloween contest, and I've added lights to it. I wish you could see it. Also, you were so kind as to answer one of my questions. I asked if I could call you Al, and you said yes. And I said, hey, Al, have you ever entertained the idea of having a princess? And you said, no, I actually haven't. But if you would like to tell people that you're my honorary princess, you can. And I thought that was so cool that you played along with me. I've been listening to you since I was 8 years old. Eat It came out, and then the fat song. And I actually bought a fat suit to wear to the concert. And you know what's super funny? Because I wore the bubble dress, I got to front row. Another girl named Katie invited me down to sit with her. And I did. I was in the front row. I couldn't believe it. It was such a beautiful night. There was a bit of a breeze, and you were rocking with your band. and the lights, and it was outside. I hope you come back another time so I can see you again. I hope you're having a great day, and happy birthday to you. And thanks for being here for all your fans all these years. And we just love you, Al. You're the best. I don't know if it's appropriate to say this, but it actually did happen. The only reason I made it to the front row is because I wore the bubble dress instead of the fat suit. And the reason the lady asked me to sit with her in the front row was because the friend she brought with her was too fat to fit in his seat. I think that's funny and Al should know, but I don't know if it's offensive. But he has the fat song. And because I wore the bubble dress and not the fat suit, I got to go to front row because her friend was too fat to fit in the seat. And I met her in the bathroom, and the only reason I met her in the bathroom at that time, I had 3 people tell me to put on my costume, but I was like, it's a non-parody show, I feel silly. And everyone was like, it's a Weird Al show, this is where you should be wearing your dress. Anyway, maybe I could add that to my podcast. I'm looking forward to scheduling a time to be in a podcast with you soon, Lauren. Thank you for putting this together for Al. Hope you're having a good day. Bye. Okay. Bye. Thank you. This is so cool.
This is Midnight Smoke from BFYTW. I'd have to say that Weird Al to me means inspiration. This man who is able to take genius works from other people, other artists, and mold it into his own and tell a different story along the same lines. It's like a parallel universe traveling, through time. But Weird Al has always been the one that connected me to other genres of music that I otherwise never would have given a chance to or even thought of. I've heard many songs first as a Weird Al version before I heard the original that he parodied. So for Weird Al, what he does is takes everyday things or something special and makes it that much more special. And to me, that's inspiration.
A couple people send me things for this episode that they didn't want to record themselves, but they wrote it out, so I'm going to read them for you. This first one is from a listener called Mr. Beast. I was a fan of Weird Al before I knew I was a fan. In 1980, I got a portable FM radio, and I took it to show a friend and for advice, since I didn't know what stations to listen to. It was a Sunday night, and he tuned in the Dr. Demento show, and number 1 on the Funny 5 was My Bologna. I was barely aware of My Sharona, so I didn't quite get it. By late 1981, I was 17 and a regular listener and recorder of the Dr. Demento show, and often played tapes of my favorite songs recorded off the radio. One of my favorites was Happy Birthday, but I didn't know who did the song. When Eat It hit the radio, I went kind of crazy with instant fandom. I went out and bought the In 3D album and never regretted spending on that. I memorized all the songs, even though I wasn't too hot on Buy Me a Condo. And I kept going to record stores, hoping that more Weird Al would just appear somehow. One day, more Weird Al did magically appear in the form of the self-titled album. But at that time, I was under the impression that Weird Al Yankovic was released after In 3D, and because of the massive success of Eat It, they had gone and gathered a bunch of his old songs and put them out as an album. Maybe my perspective was skewed because I didn't have MTV and VH1 was showing the videos for I Love Rocky Road and Ricky in high rotation as if they were new songs. I did immediately recognize Happy Birthday as an old favorite that I had always liked. By the time Dare to Be Stupid was released, I had gotten straight about the order of albums and knew that Dr. Demento was going to have Weird Al on his show as sort of a preview to the album release. So I got Dare to Be Stupid on cassette on my way home from work the day of release and took it to the weekly get-together of my church singles group. I was showing it around, and my friend Robert wanted to borrow it. I told him he had to wait until I had my honeymoon with the album. You know, when you get a new Weird album and you spend every available moment listening to it over and over again, but would let him borrow it later, which I did a week later. He said he was really excited to hear Girls Just Want to Have Lunch and didn't have the heart to tell him that it wasn't that great. So Robert returns the tape a week later and he says, by the way, I learned to play One More Minute on the piano. Well, since the place we had our weekly singles get together had a piano, there was nothing for it but to go try it out. Robert starts playing and singing and I start singing along because of course I know it by heart. And slowly the other singles start taking notice, as in, what the heck are they singing? Well, after that, Robert and I were the central attraction of every singles get-together, and there was always somebody who had never heard and would stare dumbfounded as we did One More Minute. Sometimes, 3 of the girls would even stand in a line behind us and doo-wop. We even did it for our church talent show almost a year later. After the release of Polka Party, the singles group could always count on me to be belting out Christmas at Ground Zero all through the holiday season. And I remember riding my bicycle 2 hours to a nearby city to buy the complete Al, because that was the only place that had it on release day. In 1987 and 1988, I was a missionary for my church. As such, I was not supposed to be listening to or buying popular music, but I made an exception for myself when Even Worse was released. I didn't have a lot of money, and I remember using a roll of dimes as part of my purchase for that cassette. In 1989, she who would become my wife and I went and saw UHF in theaters. And of course, I bought the cassette and was introduced to the amazing Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota. Man, what a song. At the end of 1989, we got married, and my friend Robert was one of my groomsmen. Before leaving for the hotel at the end of the night, he and I went over to the piano and performed One More Minute, one last time. Skipping ahead, in 1994, the CD box set Permanent Record was released, and I agonized over buying it. We didn't have much money, and it would be a big expenditure. Eventually, I decided not to purchase it, since I had almost all of the songs on it, except the original version of My Bologna. And the only new song, Headline News, was available. I was able to get on a cassette single. Besides, we didn't have a CD player. I had a similar agonizing over whether to buy Peter and the Wolf more than a decade earlier. By 1999, we did have a CD player and Off the Deep End on CD when Running with Scissors was released. I had heard this story that Sinead O'Connor had been recording her album when she was pregnant, and after the baby was born, she could put her album on and the child would just go to sleep. Well, my wife had just gotten pregnant with who would be our third and last child, so I went to try that idea out. And the song I used was The Saga Begins. I would sing that song to my wife's pregnant belly at every opportunity, usually with her giggling about it. And it worked! When I was in the grocery store and he was fussing and trying to climb out of the shopping cart seat, I would start singing The Saga Begins, and he would just stop and stare at me. Problem solved. My son is now 23, and I asked him about this, and he said, "Dad, that song is burned into my brain." Oh, and my 2 older children were big fans of When I Was Your Age. Somewhere in the early 2000s, we all got internet, and I discovered a place called Alcoholics Anonymous, which was run by this guy, Marty. Yes, the Torso Boy guy. And I played a few rounds of that hit game, You Don't Know Al, and I realized that there are some real serious Weird Al fans out there. I had thought I was a big Weird Al fan because I was the biggest Weird Al fan I had ever met, but there were people out there who made me look like someone who had once heard a Weird Al song on the radio in passing. Somewhere around 2010, I discovered The Fump, the Funny Music Project. There I discovered a host of other comedy musicians who are also big-time Weird Al fans. Some of them have even done parodies of Weird Al original songs. Check out Dumbledore, which is a parody of Hardware Store, My Pal the Murray, a parody of Albuquerque, and Tickets to See Weird Al in Sarasota, a parody of the Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota. Also check a song called If I Could Be Weird Al, which is not a parody of a Weird Al song, but it does have enough Weird Al references to strain my fandom, and a cameo by Weird Al Yankovic himself. As a truck driver, I'm always making sure I have stuff to listen to while driving. I went to books on tape, then books on CD, and then switched entirely to podcasts. The bad part is that I don't have much time to listen to Weird Al. When Mandatory Fun came out, I was a little surprised that I didn't get into more of the songs, except Mission Statement. That thing is an instant classic. I realized it was probably because I had not honeymooned with the album. In fact, I'd not honeymooned with a Weird album since Poodle Hat. I guess I must be a bad fan. Most of my inadequacies in being a Weird Al fan come from not having money. I was never a close personal friend of Al, and I've never been to a Weird Al concert. These things are just beyond my financial ability. I often have to scrounge and do without something else to buy the latest Weird album. But Weird Al has been there in my life for a long time. I don't have a life-changing experience, but he's been a huge part of my life.
One night, when I was 10 years old, my dad was scrolling through YouTube and called me over to show me a video. He pressed play, and I watched as a young guy wearing a Hawaiian shirt who had curly long hair took the piss out of Eminem. I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. I asked my dad who this guy was, and he told me he was a comedian named Weird Al Yankovic. Although my dad explained who he was and what he did, I couldn't really conceive of what parody was, so I quickly forgot about him. I entered the 5th grade shortly after. It was a fairly boring year, but life marched on. One September night, after I had finished my homework, my dad once again called me over to the computer to show me a video. It was none other than White and Nerdy, the first single off of Weird Al's soon-to-be-released album, Straight Outta Linwood. This time was different. This time, something spoke to me in the 2 minutes and 50-second ode to nerddom. Maybe it was Weird Al's flow. Maybe it was Donny Osmond's dancing as the crazy bone to Weird Al's Chameleonaire. The world will never know. All I know is that in the days that followed, as the song became more and more popular at school, I was hooked. I soon dove headfirst into Al's discography, delving into a lot of his older work, like Eat It, Fat, Ricky, I Love Rocky Road. I ate it all up. I looked for every Al TV interview I could find. I bought Straight Outta Linwood, as well as the Food album and permanent record. Life was good. Then in December, something happened that would change my life, at least for a while. I had been dealing with a health issue since the beginning of school, and on the last day before winter break, I came down with fever. That night, I was admitted to the ER, where I was told that I would not be returning to school. I don't remember how much time I initially spent in the hospital, but I remember that Christmas Eve was fast approaching, and I was hooked up to an IV drip that was providing me much-needed antibiotics. However, my parents wanted me home for Christmas, so they asked the doctors if they would be comfortable showing them how to do an IV drip so that I could spend the holiday at home. The doctor agreed, and so we were off. On Christmas Eve, my aunt, uncle, cousins, and grandparents gathered at our home with my parents' sister and me. As I lay on the couch opening presents, hooked up to the IV, I was overjoyed to see I had received Al's 1999 album, Running with Scissors. My mom opened the CD for me and popped it into the CD player above our microwave, and after a few seconds, the opening lines of The Saga Begins began. As everyone continued opening presents, I laid back against the couch and listened to the Ballad of Anakin Skywalker, told to the music of Don McLean's American Pie. The next 8 months were some of the most difficult that I've ever faced. There were a lot of moments where things were uncertain, terrifying even. But in those 5 minutes and 41 seconds, none of that mattered. Al's music transcended any worry about the future. There was only here and now, and right now, I was lucky to occupy the same space as a man who'd also experienced pain and suffering. A man who knew how desperately a person could need an escape from the realities of life. For that, I will always love Weird Al. Have a good one, guys.
Here's a clip from a fan who wrote in with what Weird Al means to her. This is from Joanna. I've suffered an overwhelming series of tragic deaths in the course of a few years. First, my parents were killed in a car crash, and then only a little over a year later, my fiancé died of lung cancer. Then my sister, who had been struggling with breast cancer, died just over a year after that. I was completely devastated. I was in a support group and had a counselor to help me try to cope with so much loss. Nothing made me smile. Nothing. Comedy was so depressing to me because it was almost mean-spirited, laughing at other people's expense and so often low, vulgar jokes. Then in 2014, Weird Al released his 8 videos in 8 days. I had vaguely heard of him somewhere and didn't really know what he was all about. I was so pleasantly surprised. I realized that I was smiling when I was watching his videos. I checked him out on YouTube and I was hooked. His humor didn't depend on being mean or vulgar. It was funny, smart, and silly. Just what I needed. I've been a huge fan ever since, and I've now been to 6 of his concerts. I listen to his music every day, and I admire his amazing original songs. By checking out his wife's Instagram, I've come to realize that he's a down-to-earth, nice guy who loves his family. I honestly feel that he saved my sanity and helped me to laugh again.
Hey, this is Russ. I've been on the show several times. I'm from the Infectious Groove music channel on YouTube, and I'm also the husband of the nice lady who hosts this podcast. So my thing with how Weird Al has changed my life is so many ways. The basic way I can say that he changed my life so much for the better continually from the first time that I heard his records was if you had told me when I was buying in 3D as a kid, after having already bought the Eat It single and then deciding to go back and buy the whole record, if you had told me then that a love for Weird Al would eventually lead me to the most wonderful person ever that I could possibly hope to be married to, I wouldn't have believed you at any step of the way, no matter all the way up until the most recent Weird Al releases. I would have never believed that I could have led there. And because of how awesome he is, he made so many other people in my life so much more awesome. So literally, like everywhere I look, I see the influence of Weird Al. It's been awesome for me.
Hey there, this is Summer Woods. I am really thankful to be back on this podcast. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this beautiful segment where we show our appreciation for the greatest musician of all time. I figured I'd preface this by saying I'm a pretty new Al superfan. I mean, I've appreciated his hits since I was a kid, but I only really got into his music in 2020. And that was when I saw UHF for the first time. And ever since then, it's snowballed into something that really means a lot to me in life. So the short version is Al is basically a beacon of positivity to me. You know, I tend to have strong emotions, and sometimes I get, you know, really angry, really down, and sometimes I don't even know why. And, but it's just the one thing that, you know, pretty reliably works. I will put on any of his albums, and I can't really be too upset anymore. I can basically put on any of his albums, and it's impossible to stay mad or to stay too depressed about anything because, you know, once Polka's going and once you're laughing at his incredible lyrics, you can't really be too down, you know? Not to mention just how much I enjoy his music when I'm not even feeling down. I mean, he clearly puts so much craft into what he does, and even though I work in a completely different genre of music, I'm really inspired by his dedication and just the level of thought he puts into stuff in general. And in general, as a person, he's a very, very influential role model in the way I think about things as a fellow musician. There's so many musicians who just aren't grateful for what they do for a living and kind of take it out on others and try to force things to be different somehow. And that frankly kind of disgusts me, and it makes me kind of sad for that person in general. And Al is the kind of person who is always so thankful for, you know, the opportunity he has to do what he does in life, and he doesn't think, you know, well, why doesn't everybody like what I do? Or why doesn't everybody, like, you know, take me seriously or something like that? You know, he really, like, rolls with the punches and just kind of says, this is what I do, and I'm gonna have a good time doing it. If you like it, awesome. If you don't, I don't care. And I really, really love that about him. And, just always has a smile to offer, and he always... I feel like I'm gonna cry right now. He, like I said, strong emotions. So, basically, in short, Al, you make me want to be a more resilient, thankful, and warm kind of person. And you remind me that not taking things seriously is not only a good thing, it's absolutely necessary to our happiness and kind of our understanding of the world. It sounded like way more profound than I was intending, but I actually think it is pretty profound. So, happy birthday, Al, and thank you so much for having me back on the fabulous Beard Al podcast. I hope you all have a wonderful, fantabulous, serendipitous day. Thank you.
Hello, this is Ron. First off, I'd like to say happy birthday to Al, and thank you for all the contributions you've made to the music industry and my life. And I'd like to start with what Weird Al means to me. Well, a lot, really, because being born with Asperger's, I wasn't like other kids, and because of that, most kids avoided me a lot, and adults really didn't pay attention to me either. But because I spent a lot of time alone, I spent a lot of time obtaining new skills, knowledge, and listening to whatever music I could find. And for some reason, what attracted me most was the odd music. And one day, my life was changed forever when a friend of my sister's played me Amish Paradise shortly after the album was released. And after that, it blew my mind. I already knew the song Gangsta's Paradise, and I was in love with it. But Al's song was just on a whole nother level, and it didn't take me long to get everything that I could possibly get a hold of. And then, shortly after that, I developed hyperhidrosis, which is a sweating disorder. And that made my isolation a lot worse, especially in school where most kids avoided me because of it and constantly verbally harassing me because of it. And it was thanks to Al's music I was able to ignore them just to get through school so I can graduate. So I'm really thankful to Al and everything he's done for my life, especially getting me through my childhood. And I'd definitely like to thank him for that. And another way I thanked Al is I put a Weird Al reference in all of my kids' names, so a little piece of him can be a part of them forever. Well, that's probably a lot of time at the moment. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Beard Al Podcast. And you all have a great day.
My name is Casey.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are 2/3 of the Itch.
And this week, we're scratching the itch to talk about Weird Al at the invite of our good friend Lauren.
Always a pleasure to connect with Lauren and talk about the weird one.
And this is a guy who means a lot to both of us. What was your introduction to Weird Al, Casey, that you remember?
My Aunt Liz, I was about 4, I think. And I think she got the first Greatest Hits cassette that he had. And then she either gave it to me as a present or, I don't know, she was a fan and then she got it and then somehow I got a hold of it. I don't remember all that specific because I was 4, but I just remember him being always a constant in my life after that, whether it be listening to the cassettes or listening to Fun Radio, local radio station that played Weird Al a lot.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of people would say, Weird Al is a part of their childhood, but I kind of would take it a step further and just say that it's something that I always connected with even at that young of an age. And it kind of, as I grew up, the appreciation of Weird Al grew with me over time.
Same. I think my initial discovery of him was also on Fun Radio. So St. Louis used to have this awesome radio station that it played Dr. Demento and just weird novelty songs and quirky stuff and kids stuff. And Weird Al was definitely a mainstay on there.
Yes.
Here's what's weird, extra weird. Everything's weird because of who we're talking about. My recollection is that Alapalooza, which came out in 93, is one of the first cassette tapes I remember having. But Dare to Be Stupid, which came out in 85, is one of the first CDs I remember having. So somehow I had the more advanced form of music 8 years prior. Yeah. I was devolving in my music listenership by the time Alapalooza came out. Either way, I freaking love those albums and everything else more or less. And so he never really left, and he's been a unifying force. Like, my family will put Weird Al on in the car and road trips as a kid, and everybody would be having a good time singing along. It's impossible not to.
It's funny you mentioned that, and if listeners go back and listen to our Alapalooza episode with Lauren, that was the first CD that I ever owned.
Your first CD? One of my first cassettes. The 90s were a strange time to be alive.
Yeah.
But this guy stands the test of time. He's an amazing live show. And what's really impressive is that for 40 plus years, he has been an amazing example of decency and humility just as a human.
Yes.
And especially a human in the spotlight and with high regard and praise and, money. The man's well off and he's well known and somehow still stays humble and all that.
And to go one step further on top of that, he can do pretty much anything. The man is such a creative genius when it comes to all things music and parodies. And it's been a staple for me as far as my connection to music. And I'm always trying to come up with different lyrics about funny things just to amuse myself. And I'd like to think that Weird Al would make some of the same choices that I make when I'm coming up with something.
He's a supreme musical talent who uses his powers for good. And I think that's wonderful. And not only that, to many artists, being parodied by Weird Al is more prestigious than most awards they could win.
Yeah.
Like multiple artists have actually said, that's how you know you've made it, is when he does your song. So, what a stamp of approval to go from a guy who was playing his accordion and making fart sounds to being one of the pinnacles of achievement that an artist can aspire to is getting your Weird Al cover.
Exactly. And to think that years later, we start our own podcast, we become friends with Lauren through other podcast friends of ours and guest on each other's shows and talk about Weird Al. And who knows, Weird Al's probably heard our voice talk about him.
I'd like to imagine so.
Yeah.
But that's a great point. He's bringing people together. Without the Weird One, we would not know Lauren and Weird Al and probably multiple other people connected in through her. And so that is also a great benefit.
Yeah.
He brings the people together.
He does. That's just a little bit of what Weird Al means to us. So happy birthday, Al.
So this isn't my first Weird Al or last Weird Al story, but it's the story of how I met Al at the first Ill-Advised Vanity Tour in 2018. So I knew what the show was going to be about, and I, had recently recollected all Al songs on iTunes because that's how I was listening to music at the time. I've been driving our kids around and just listening to everything Weird Al all the time, all the songs. And after a couple weeks, I guess he was 4-year-old at the time, our oldest, I think he was 5. He said, "Wait a minute, Dada, is this are all these songs by Weird Al?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "Wow, Weird Al is the best musician in the world." So of course I'm in tears, trying to get my high five, nearly crashing the car. But anyway, fast forward a couple weeks. So my bride and I went to the concert. She had got me VIP tickets because it was close to my birthday. And the show was absolutely amazing. And we weren't in the front of the VIP line. We weren't in the back. We were kind of in the middle. And I'm watching how everything's happening. And the guy in front of me, I could tell he really loved Al and was excited to be there. But he walked up, had him sign something, was like brimming with excitement, but didn't say anything. And then signed his thing and left. I'm like, oh shoot, I could see that happening. Being so starstruck, I can't say anything. So without any thought, I get up there and just start regurgitating the story of how I'm driving around with our kids, and our oldest said that Al was the best musician in the world. And Al is staring at me with these amazing, intense brown eyes, and I'm like, he's actually listening to what I'm saying. So, of course, then I'm like, oh my God, what am I saying? But I must have got it pretty close, because when I finished my rambling story, he goes, "Well, looks like you're doing some excellent parenting." And my mind figuratively melted. I didn't go to the show or go to the VIP with the expectation of having my entire existence validated by one of my favorite heroes of all time. But the fact that he had actually paid attention to it, and then he had maybe it was a stock response, but the fact that he was listening was just super amazing. And it made me feel like, wow, this guy's really genuine. That little 30 or 40 second encounter made me realize he's not saving anything for the stage or videos that he won't give just directly to the fans. He made me feel special, and I'm no one. Like that, you don't need to do that. It was amazing that he can do that with everyone. Of course, I already loved the music and the comedy and the humor and the weirdness and wackiness and everything. And I knew he had a reputation for being a nice person and well-liked, but to see it firsthand just randomly like that was just amazing, and just elevated my love for Al to a whole nother level. So I'm happy to share the story.
Well, that was great, wasn't it? That's the end of that. Thank you for listening. And thank you for continuing to listen to this show. We're trying to have fun. And I keep saying that. But, you know, we do what we do. I hope to see you back here the next time we're back here. And much love and stay weird. Ciao.